Let's take a look first of all. Let's examine what they say about the Bitter Lakes, those little lakes that were in between the Gulf of Suez and the Mediterranean Sea. And one of those, by the way, was called the Reed Sea, as that fits. So that sort of seems like that could fit. Now, these lakes were all very close to each other, going from the Gulf of Suez to the Mediterranean, but they weren't connected. But later on, they would be. Before the time of Moses, pharaohs came and they dug an actual canal connecting these lakes from the Gulf of Suez all the way to the Nile River, which then fed into the Mediterranean Sea. Thus, there was a canal in ancient times that did that. They believe this was probably done around 1850 BC. Like I say, that's long before, 400 years or so before the time of Moses. And also, this canal was very, very shallow. We can tell from what historians wrote about this. According to a paper written in 1975 by Sneh, Weisbrod, and Perith, this man-made waterway only had to be about 2 meters in depth for the type of crafts that they had, floating crafts and boats and things on that waterway at that time. So it didn't have to be deep. They also agreed with what the ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote in his book, The Histories, concerning this, because he too writes that the pharaohs built a canal, making a canal going from the Gulf of Suez to the Mediterranean. Herodotus also tells us that Pharaoh Necho rebuilt it, deepened it and stuff a little bit, but rebuilt it around, that would have been around 610 BC. We know also from Herodotus that Darius the First, the Persian, he rebuilt that canal. So it was a very important canal for commerce and trade. It was super important. That's why it was made. Now there's a problem with this Pharaoh's canal that was made in ancient times. The problem is it does not fit the topography of the rest of the Exodus story. And what we see with the Exodus story, it doesn't fit. It's too flat, is what I'm saying. And we're going to see, I believe that this is a key point, disqualifying these places for that because it is so flat in that area. It's not mountainous at all that you see here. It has many serious flaws, though that theory, those through the Bitter Lakes, through the Canal of the Pharaohs, or even the Suez Canal, I'm going to show you that I think there's serious problems with those ideas. The most important one for the Pharaohs, the Canal of the Pharaohs, is it's so shallow. Thus, how would a huge horse-drawn army of chariots be drowned in such a shallow body of water that's just maybe 2 to 3 meters deep? Not everybody would be drowned by that. No. Many scholars believe the Exodus was then at the Suez Canal. For instance, Michael Obleth, he agrees that the crossing must have been in the Suez Canal. And he writes about this in his book, The Exodus Itinerary Sites. And in this book, he describes why he thinks it's the Suez. But I believe he and others miss the major clue that makes the Suez Canal an unlikely spot. For one reason, the Suez Canal has been dredged many times, and there has never been recorded anything about a debris field of chariot parts and stuff like this, evidence of destroyed army, Egyptian army. It's never been found. Thus, I don't think this is the correct place. Others suggest that the crossing was somewhere down further in the Gulf of Suez. And if you follow in our map, looking down the side of the Gulf here, this too runs into a very serious problem. Because we are given an idea of how many people are in the Exodus, how many people there were. We get this from Exodus chapter 12, verses 37 and 38. And it reads, "And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds." Now, as one who has been in camp ministry for many, many years, over 20 years I worked in camp ministry. And I'll tell you, a group that size with all of that stuff, all those animals and stuff, you're going to need a huge campsite. I mean, a gigantic campsite. This could be easily over 1 million people, easily, possibly 2 or even more. That's a lot of people with cattle and herds and stuff like this. And here lies the problem with the western side of the Gulf of Suez. There's not an accommodating campsite that can box in the group. Remember, the Israelites get boxed in as they're crossing. They have the sea is on one side, the Egyptians are behind them, and to the left and to the right, the passage is unattainable. They cannot go either way. They are trapped. That's what's going on. And no place on the Suez Canal just seems to fit the geography that we see here. It just doesn't make it a large campsite that they could be there where they couldn't escape. But going back to the term Yam Suf, Yam, as noted, we don't have a problem with that. It's the sea. We got that down. It's the sea. Yam is sea. But can we discover where other Bible writers use the term Yam Suf? We can. We can check with other books of the Bible and other places in the Bible where the term Yam Suf is used and determine what it means. Let's take a look at some of these. In Exodus chapter 23, verse 31, it reads out of the English Standard word-for-word translation, "And I will set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness of the Euphrates, and I will give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you." Now, from this description, God is giving us a description of the promised land. Now, this is the land that God promised Abraham. This is going to be what is allotted to Israel. And from here, most scholars, a majority of them, believe that the sea that is being mentioned in Exodus 23:31 has to be the Gulf of Aqaba. If you take a map and you draw from the Gulf of Aqaba, the tip of it, modern day Eilat, Israel, and you go along the border of the wilderness, all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, then you go up and you draw all the way to the Euphrates and come back down, that pretty well fits the land of Israel that you see in atlases of the old nation of Israel. Here's another one. In 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 26, we read, "King Solomon built a fleet of ships at Ezion Geber, which is near Elath, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom." So here again, we see Yam Suf. Now, this passage clearly means the modern day port city and resort city of Eilat, Israel. Where is this? It's sitting on the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba of the Red Sea. Nobody really disputes that whatsoever because it fits in with the other things that we know that Solomon had a fleet of ships, and it all fits with biblical things. Another one, the book of Numbers, chapter 21, verse 14. It reads, "From Mount Hor, they set out by way of the Red Sea, Yam Suf, to go around the land of Edom." Now that's a key thing, Edom. This passage also describes this Gulf of Aqaba because it mentions the country of Edom. Edom is mentioned. And Edom is on the south side of Judah. That tribe, or Israel, on the south side is where it was. Many people go to Petra on vacations and stuff over to the Middle East. Petra, which is in modern day Jordan, that area goes all the way down. Jordan and Israel have lines, they sort of connect right down towards the bottom there. And that is the place that's being mentioned here. So Edom, the nation of Edom, if you look in atlases and stuff, you're going to see it goes down to the Gulf of Aqaba. So that's what the description is. Here's another clue. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapters 1 and 2, in those two chapters, there's mention of a place that is called Mount Seir. Now, my friend Dr. Stephen Notley, in his atlas, The Sacred Bridge, Mount Seir, he says, is not one single mountain, which it's not. It's a whole mountain range going from the south end, as he describes, of the Dead Sea down to the Gulf of Aqaba. That is a long mountain ridge. If you have a topographical map, you can see this. This appears to support, again, the Gulf of Aqaba as the Red Sea, that Yam Suf is that Red Sea. Yam Suf also appears in the book of Judges. In the book of Judges, We love that book. It's a lot of fun. All these judges and tales and stuff. Well, in Judges chapter 11, verse 16 through 17, we read, "But when they came up from Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Israel then sent messengers to the king of Edom." That's a key thing. We're talking about Edom again. Now, this passage too speaks of the Israelites traveling through the wilderness to the Red Sea. If it's traveling through the wilderness, how much wilderness is there from where Goshen was to those Bitter Lakes? Or how much wilderness is there down to the Gulf of Suez or the Suez Canal? It really seems to fit, in my opinion, more to the Gulf of Aqaba. And since it mentions the nation of Edom, and Edom sits right above that, it's the southern border of Edom, this seems to fit very well. One more, and likely the most significant verse, giving direction and placement of crossing a deep body of water during the Exodus, comes from the book of Jeremiah, who was writing on the prophecy to befall the kingdom of Edom. Remember, Edom is just north of the Gulf of Aqaba. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 21 reads, "At the sound of their fall, the earth shall tremble, and the sound of their cry shall be heard at the Red Sea." Yam Suf, Red Sea. There can be no doubt whatsoever that Jeremiah is giving a prophecy concerning the destruction of the nation of Edom. And Edom's southern part is where you find the Gulf of Aqaba.
Support the show. Become a donor at evidenceforfaith.org/give.